Hey y'all, this is Corby R. Rice, and I'm back again. Not for another Creative Weekly update that's actually coming up in the next episode, but for this episode, episode number 60, I wanted to talk exclusively and explicitly and specifically about Black Panther and, of course, the importance of creative entrepreneurship. And I'll end the note, or end the note, I'll end the podcast on that particular note, um, talking about creative entrepreneurship and what it means to take creative output and to take your product and take your ideas into your own hands, and also what it means to basically not wait on anybody's permission to do so. Well, we'll talk about that because it does relate to Black Panther, and particularly relates to the upswing that I hope is coming in the wake of Black Panther's massive, massive success. So let's just jump into it, okay? By the way, if you wanted an update as to how my previous week has gone, please check out episode number 59. Which is entitled Over My Dead Director's Body, Bruh. It's an interesting story of a battle over director's credit as well as the victory that was achieved. So let's get into it. Black Panther, I saw it actually not the day that it came out, but the day before, because in Tucson, there was like a special premiere date of Thursday the 15th. And so I was extremely blessed to have been able to catch it and see it. I will be seeing it again, and I will probably also go back and see it for a third time. So just be ready and aware that that is what is happening in my life right now. That is how amazing this movie was. And just FYI, not that this is really the most important part of Black Panther, but it's pretty much a movie that anybody can go in and see. You do not have to be black or even pro-black really to go see to go see this movie and enjoy it. It's just a damn good film, whether or not the gravity of the first major Marvel black superhero being on screen across the country and across the world is hitting you or not. You know, whether or not you understand the importance, the cultural and social importance of that one fact, you will still enjoy Black Panther. And honestly, of all like the quote black superhero movies, which is I think there's like three in total, which include Blade and Luke Cage. And Blade is not even really a hero; he's more of like an anti-hero, to be honest with you. Luke Cage was great. Luke Cage had also broken records and literally broke the internet because Netflix's servers pretty much like failed when we all tried to watch it at once. That's how successful that was. But Black Panther, in and of itself, just like looking at the critical acclaim before and the acclaim and the numbers at the box office, let's just focus on that before we even go into like how amazing it was aesthetically and thematically. Black Panther is breaking all kinds of records. It had, for one, before it even opened, had the highest grossing or highest number of ticket sales, online ticket sales through Fandango than any other movie previous to that movie, with Marvel or otherwise. I also believe when I last checked the statistics, which was like a week ago, had the fifth was ranking as like the fifth highest grossing Marvel film of all time in the opening weekend of Marvel films. And actually, I think that's number three. I think the Avengers is still number one. I believe Captain America Civil War or something like that is number two. And I believe Black Panther is actually number three with regard to it being the highest grossing film in its opening weekend. It was also the fifth highest grossing film, I believe, that was released in the first highest the first highest grossing film released in February, and then the fifth highest grossing film from Marvel of all time. And that's not even, I mean, we're not even like firmly into week two of it being released. It's only been out for about 10 days and it's breaking all kinds of records. It is in my personal circle, and that, you know, I am African American, as you can see. it's really the only movie I've seen in literally 10 to 15 years where people were raving about it so much and talking about how they're going back to see it for a second and third time. Uh, and I like have a lot of people who are into film in my life, obviously because I'm into film. And I have never heard people talking about literally going back and spending 20, 30, 40, 50 more dollars just to see another movie multiple times. I think the last time I actually heard of that even happening was like 2007 or 2008 maybe at the earliest, with Transformers, like the first Transformers film that came out, that summer blockbuster. I went back to see Transformers for a second time because that's how good that damn movie is. But and since then I had not heard any other movie having that much excitement around it. So if I got all those numbers wrong, whatever, you can laugh at me and say I'm wrong, but just go and double check. I'm sure the numbers are more updated now, and you can leave comments below with like the real numbers. But that was what was going on with Black Panther. It's making crazy amounts of money and this is just nationally. We haven't even talked about foreign movie sales. We haven't talked about foreign box office opening weekends. We haven't talked anything about that. So this is quite easily going to be one of Marvel's most successful franchises, and that's not even including the merchandising potential. I mean, we really, and when I say we, I mean the Black community in particular. I mean, we're gonna easily sink a few hundred to a few $1,000s into merchandise, from posters to mugs to t-shirts to pillowcases to entire bed sheet sets. I know I'm buying one for my daughter, so y'all need to get it together and just get the bed sheet set out right now. To action figures. Halloween's going to be lit. Every single Black child is probably going to be dressed up as Black Panther, as one of the Dora Milaje, as Nakia, or as Shuri, or as any one of the amazing African royalties, kings, queens, the tribe, Mbaku, who was the king of the mountain tribe. Like, y'all are just gonna, I mean, this is really going to basically pay CEOs salaries for the next 20 years. I'm just keeping it real. Marvel CEOs, to be exact. And so this is not like, for me, like a point of pride, like, hey, corporations that don't care about us take all of our money. But I'm just saying all this to impress upon you just how financially successful and impactful Black Panther has been and will be in all of its iterations. And also just to express to you how long the Black community has been waiting for a massive nationwide release of a Black superhero that not only encompasses just the possibilities of heroism and nobility, but also who embodies an image that is positive, an image that is uplifting, a representation that shows us in a position of deep intelligence, power, aristocracy, just all the things that you never see associated with Blackness are being represented in this film. This is essentially a reimagining of Africa and its peoples had it not been colonized. This is our ultimate utopia, like the representation of our utopia. And this is also a representation of a movement that is already happening in the Black community that deals specifically with the growth and the sort of proper, I don't know really how to say it, but the growth and the proliferation of Afrofuturism, basically Black sci-fi. And this entire trend within the indie community has been going on for a couple of decades now. I would say that there are more and more people nowadays who are writing Black sci-fi, African sci-fi, Afro-Caribbean sci-fi, and fantasy as well. Let's not forget that. But Black Panther was a major, major step forward in terms of improving the representation of black people and the black image in media. Because usually when you see us in a movie, in horror, we're getting killed off because we're the extra people in the cast getting killed off. In action films, we're not usually the lead character, we're the support character. And in romance, I mean, sometimes you will see like a lot of black romance, but that's very niche market, so it's not really released on the mainstream. In fantasy and sci-fi, we're almost never the lead character ever, like ever. And whenever we are in any one of those genres, where there's a mainly white cast, or not a black lead, not only are we marginalized and kind of put to the side as sort of like a token black person, but we also tend to be like the comedian of the group or the coon of the group. And that's not to say that black people don't love to laugh, but we also like get serious and get brave and get strong and get gangster and get smart and intelligent. And in this movie, you had a representation of all the many nuances of blackness and the many faces of blackness. Just the technological advancement edge was really incredible. And I'm actually let's just get into Black Panther, because I'm kind of dancing around the issues, and I just want to talk about everything, honestly, and just like vibe with you on how amazing it was. FYI, there are spoilers here, so if you couldn't guess that there would be spoilers, there are spoilers, so turn it off now if you do not want to hear any plot reveals. And if you haven't seen it, please go see it, come back, and then talk to me, because you do not want anything spoiled in this movie. Although even if I did drop spoilers, you should still go see it, because wow, what an incredible movie. So we talked about looking at Africa, looking at blacks without colonization, right? And how amazing not just the city of Wakanda was, but also like its people. So I want to get more specifically into the mise-en-scène. And for those of you who are not really familiar with film terms, mise-en-scène is pretty much everything on the screen when you're looking at a film. Setting, clothing, if there's like CGI stuff there, character makeup, character form, just everything that you colors, and color palettes, everything that you see on the screen. Black Panther's mise-en-scène was just overwhelming in the best way possible. It was incredible. I mean, the city of Wakanda, or the country of Wakanda, was a lovely, super awesome balance of this high-tech, just cybernetic, kick-ass nation, but with all of the feeling of an African country. And when I say the feeling of an African country, I don't mean poverty. I mean markets with people selling their wares, which it's funny that what we look at as primitive in other countries, because for a lot of Americans, having open markets is like sort of like old world and quote unquote primitive. Yet at the same time, we're trying to bring farmers markets back and make it a sort of yuppie urban, just local food thing that's super expensive and important. Local food is important, but we try to take something that we see as primitive and basically try to upgrade it, modernize it, and make these things cleaner and more quote unquote American, when really most countries in the world have open markets. So just FYI, I went on that tangent because sometimes people will associate things like open markets and people selling their wares in a bazaar as being primitive, but it really isn't. It's really how most of the world lives, and we continue to appropriate that style of living and just slap on some high prices to make us feel like we're better. But moving on. When I talk about African culture and African, like the authentic feeling of being in an African town, you have the high tech buildings, you have all of this technology, but then you have the mix of the open market of, the little guagua buses that are driving down the street. There's a very sort of like intrinsic and yet subtextual connection to brownness and the earth. There are a lot of earth tones in Wakanda. If you look at the color story and the color palette of the film, lots of amazing earth tones, lots of blacks, lots of greens, lots of browns, lots of reds and ochres, some grays and whites, dealing with the gorilla and the tribe in the mountains. There's just even in the market, like there, you can see like the dust kicking up a little bit. And it's just gorgeous. And people have like these natural hairstyles, locks, froze, bantu knots, shaved heads. It's just on point. I just wanted to live in Wakanda. I wanted to basically give up my passport. Love you, America, but I'm gonna go to live in Wakanda. That's how I was feeling, and I just wanted to be there. And so you had this mix of city life with the technology, but then you also had a mix of this technology with the more rural and country life. You did have rolling plains. You did see some huts occasionally. You did see some farms and ranches. And you also saw mountain ranges. You saw these gorgeous mountain ranges and these valleys, to the point where we were even in the snow-capped mountains when we were visiting one of the Wakandan tribes that decided not to follow technological advances. The biodiversity of Wakanda was incredible and also very reflective of the biodiversity of the African continent. But then you also had this really amazing high-tech feel. The color story was incredible. Just the bright, gorgeous colors. And now the color story of the characters is a little bit interesting, because while the color story of the actual setting was more earth tone, the characters themselves had their own personal color stories when they were individuals and also when they were together. There was definitely a lot of, in certain instances, especially when we saw T'Challa, who is the king of Wakanda and also the Black Panther, there was a lot of black. He was in black a lot because he was symbolizing not only being the Black Panther, being the king, but also black, and the Black American flag, or the Pan-African flag, is a symbol of blackness, like our dark skin, which is very powerful and meaningful. He was dressed in black a lot. And then there was a point at the end where he was dressed in black, but then he had kente cloth cuffs on his sleeves, which were just gorgeous. It was really amazing. And then you also saw a lot of purples, which is a symbol, a worldwide kind of symbol of royalty. All right, we saw the king's main advisor, Zudi, I think his name was, who was wearing purple. Okay, purple symbolizing loyalty. And that was an interesting color story, because Zudi's story actually revolved around the loyalty to the former king, T'Chaka, who was T'Challa's father, who was the former king of Wakanda, who was unfortunately murdered in a terrorist bombing, as you guys would have seen in Captain America Civil War, which was a very sad murder. And it was incidental. It wasn't on purpose, but like he still died as a result. So that was interesting. Let me see. Color story. The Dora Milaje. Definitely their color story was about red and gold. Gold being the symbol of power and rank in Wakanda, as well as the red, which I believe symbolized fierceness, passion, and beauty, as well as just perhaps the amount of blood that flows when you try to mess with the Dora Milaje. The Dora Milaje, for those of you guys who don't know, they are the bald warrior women who act as the top elite fighting forces in Wakanda, and also the personal guard to the king of Wakanda, whoever the king is at that time. So they are loyal to the throne and they are loyal to the people. And that's actually the entire story that is embedded in Danai Gurira's character, Okoye, who is the general of the army. Okoye was just amazing, gorgeous, built. She had this slim, gorgeous like but muscular body. She just looked amazing as a warrior and as a woman, and was just like exuding all kinds of black girl magic and female badassery and power that I was just here for. And we'll talk actually more about women in just a sec. But I say all that to say that the color scheme was very much drawn from inspirations that Ryan Coogler, who was the director, got while he was visiting Africa. There were definitely a lot of traditional there was traditional African dress, okay, or styles that were also inspired by African dress. So um, the queen mother, T'Challa's mother, who was played by Angela Bassett, she her entire outfit maybe wasn't directly pulled from a queen's sort of, let's see, how do I say this? It wasn't directly modeled off of African queens, but it was certainly inspired from the African womanly dress, and then elevated to sort of like the queen, like what a queen would wear in that context. It was gorgeous. Angela Bassett was looking on point at every single time. She was just looking amazing. So yeah, just a whole bunch of wonderful things. So even you could literally put this movie on mute and still just be in awe of how amazing the set director, costume director, production designer, just like them together as a team. They need to be getting some kind of Oscar. Get the whole damn Oscar, if not, at least a nomination, because that entire, just everything about the production design and the costume design and the makeup and the hair was incredible. Just amazing. So I just want to talk about the characters too, because I haven't even gotten into the storyline yet. We'll get into that. But the characters, the relationships between the men and the women was just wonderful, okay? Because often in modern day media, you'll see a lot of strife and turmoil in terms of how relationships between black men and black women unfold, both in real life and online. I mean, it all looks very dysfunctional in modern day media. Black women have a lot of baggage and hurt when it comes to how we view ourselves, how the world views us as like being ugly, being undesirable because we don't have that European look, especially if you're a dark-skinned woman with kinky hair. You are often seen, like me, you're often seen as like the bottom of the barrel when it comes to beauty and power and elegance and femininity. We're often accused of being too masculine, being too overbearing, being too independent, too. We're too this, too that, whatever. We're emasculating our men. We don't support our men. We don't love our men. We take all the jobs from our men, just all this craziness. And then there's a bitterness. I don't have this bitterness, but I think that we've, as a people, have sort of moved past this for the most part. But there tends to sometimes be a bitterness that we harbor against each other, both black men and black women, when it comes to interracial dating. Black women get a lot of hate and anger if we decide to date someone who is not African American or dark skin or black. Whereas black men dating or having sex interracially somehow is just something that we just have to be okay with. These are the things that black women deal with. On the other side, what black men deal with is a constant barrage of stereotypes. Black men, run away from their responsibilities. Black men are lazy. Black men ain't no good. Black men aren't good fathers. They're absentee fathers. Black men are criminals. Black men this. Black men that. Black men don't support black women. Black men aren't attracted to black women. They have all these stereotypes. Oh, they're criminals. They're liars. They're cheaters. They're irresponsible. They're thugs. There's all these things that black men and black women sometimes in real life, all these stereotypes that we project and put onto each other, to the extent that I don't even know truthfully how many of us think these things about each other. But it's easy to assume that we all hate each other just by looking at conversations that are happening online and interactions that are happening. In real life, the story may be very different, but I do know in Black Panther, this was a place, and it's honestly one of the few places you see in media where black men and women are just beautiful together. They're working together as partners, as collaborators in healthy relationships, both romantically and friendship wise, where they support each other. The black woman can be gorgeous and beautiful, independent and strong, and still also be loved and desired by the black man. The black man does not have to, he's masculine and he's grounded and he's in charge and he's ruling his kingdom or his tribe, but he is also supported by and looks to be supported by the black woman and does not feel threatened by the black woman. In the actual movie, Okoye, who is the general and the leader of the Dora Milaje, is in a relationship with Maccabi. I believe that's his name. Maccabi. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. Who is the leader of one of the 5 Wakandan tribes who has decided to stay. So Maccabi is a friend of T'Challa, who's the king of Wakanda, but Maccabi's also dating the leader of the Dora Milaje. So he is dating the ultimate strong black woman. You know what I'm saying? Who could hold her own against him in battle and probably defeat him. And yet they still have a very healthy, balanced, loving relationship with one another. At the same time, they do not allow that love to be tainted by, the point at which they're actually on 2 opposite sides of a civil war. So it was very interesting to see that unfold. And then we also have Nakia, who's played by Lupita Nyong'o. And Nakia is the love interest of T'Challa, who is the king of Wakanda. And they have a very loving, supportive relationship. They're not even together, actually, but you can still tell they were in love with each other, And there's one point where T'Challa got killed, quote unquote, where we thought he was dead. And Nakia, who had been kind of curving him and swerving on him the whole time, mourned him, and she said, I loved him, and she couldn't really decide. She was torn between being with her king and supporting Wakanda, but also going out into the world and trying to help the rest of the black world, which is a hot ass mess, because Wakanda right now is basically hiding in open sight. They have this gorgeous city that's being protected by these illusions and these force fields, and nobody knows Wakanda exists. But Nakia knows that outside of Wakanda, a lot of the African and African-American and Afro-Caribbean populations are suffering, and she wants to go and help those. And T'Challa, as her former lover and current love interest, doesn't get in her way. He wants her to stay with him and to rule Wakanda by his side and be his queen or whatever, But he still respects the fact that she has her own work to do and she has to be free in this world to do it. So it was just a very, there was no competition. There was no headbutting. There was no dysfunction in how the black man and woman and the black family works. And it was just nice to see that on screen for a change. You look at Tyler Perry, and no offense to him, because I do admire the empire he has built for himself. I really do. But in his particular canon, his entire focus is the dysfunction of the black family, So even though he's done a lot of interesting things for the black creative community and has grown his empire in a very compelling way, he is not really doing anything revolutionary with regard to the image of the black family and with regard to the relationships between black men and black women. But this movie, Black Panther, is, and that's what I really loved about it. They worked in tandem and they trusted each other, and they allowed each other to be strong individually so that they can also be strong together. I loved it. I was here for it. It was so positive and so uniting, and I was in love with it. Now I'm going to talk about the enemies in the story. So that brings us to the actual storyline. I'm not going to actually be here to give you a whole freaking summary, of what happened, because like, why? You could just look that up online. But just to give you like a brief analysis, because in this particular story, the primary enemy is Killmonger. His name is Eric Killmonger, and he's an American black who grew up as an orphan, worked really hard, was smart, got into MIT, and then he went to do some special forces slash black ops, shit on the side. And he has been training his entire life to come to Wakanda and basically take over as king. Now, to give you a little bit of background, FYI, every single story in the Marvel universe, that had all like the inaugural stories, like the first Spider-Man story, the first Iron Man, the first Captain America story, the first Avengers stories, like these are all origin stories. So this is to introduce us to the character and show us how the character becomes who he is and becomes the hero that he is. And so for this particular movie, the origin story is not just about T'Challa, but it's also about Wakanda and its place in the world. And where Eric Killmonger comes in is that when T'Challa's father, was in charge and ruling, okay, he had sent his brother to California basically to be a spy on the outside world so they can report back what's going on. Because, they're a hidden country, but they still need to have intel and their own CIA level, officers doing data collection work and whatever, on the rest of the world. So they had a bunch of different spies literally all over the world who came from Wakanda. He had sent, the king at that time, T'Chaka, had sent his own brother to live in Cali. And to basically be a spy to report back. And while the king's brother was there, he fell in love with a black American woman. And, this chick is like a chick like me, you know what I'm saying? Who is not Wakandan, who wasn't African, but just was African American. And in the process of falling in love with this woman, they have a child, okay? And he also begins to sympathize with the struggle of black Americans in America. This is a guy who witnessed the California riots, who witnessed the civil rights movement. Oakland was the birthplace of the actual Black Panther movement and resistance, to protect the black community from white supremacist violence. And he saw how during the civil rights movement, black people were suffering and being oppressed in the country, and it broke his heart. So what he did was, unfortunately, was betray Wakanda and send Ulysses Claw in to basically steal some vibranium, because the king's brother just wanted the rest of the black community to have the same kinds of technological advancements that Wakanda has, so they can defend themselves. That whole thing went sideways. The uncle got exposed for betraying their nation. And in a scuffle between the brother and the king kills the brother. Very sad. And then leaves. But he knows that the brother has a son who is the king's nephew. And the king leaves the son behind. So the son ends up going upstairs finally. We find this out later. Finding his father's body, mourning, and growing up all by himself into the villain. Okay, that son becomes Eric Killmonger, who was so angry and so enraged, not only by his father's death, but also by the oppression that he has seen in the black community and the stuff that he has had to go through. And knowing that there was this mystical place, this technologically advanced, amazing mecca for black people, that wasn't doing anything for the black community, really pissed Killmonger off. And so Killmonger made himself into the ultimate fighter, the ultimate strategist, and then went on a campaign to return to Wakanda with the help of Ulysses Claw, who he ends up killing, to then go and claim what he saw as his rightful place on the throne. Now, because T'Challa and Killmonger are cousins, Killmonger legally, according to Wakandan law, has the right to challenge T'Challa for the throne. He does, and he ends up killing T'Challa. And so then he's like, okay, I'm king now. What we're going to do is take all this vibranium and all these awesome weapons and send them out to, all of our spies all over the world. And then we're going to have a massive worldwide black revolution. And that's how this is going to go down. Because I am tired of you folks in Wakanda sitting up on your high horses, looking down, or not even looking really at everybody else, especially your own people, who were stolen away from Africa and not helping. So it was oh God, I really want to go see this movie again as soon as possible. I'm waiting for my friend because she wants to wait until spring break, which is next week, and I might just have to go. I don't know. I guess I can wait, but I'm just kind of annoyed because we were supposed to go together on opening night, and she gonna wait for like 3 weeks to go by, whatever. But the movie made some really, really amazing, incredible statements on the responsibility of the black elite to the rest of the black community. And these are conversations that the black community has had within itself pretty much since we've been alive. Okay, what is the responsibility of the people who, quote, made it to those who are still left behind? What is the responsibility of the mother country who literally sold its own people and allowed its people to get stolen away? Because some of us were just stolen. I mean, it wasn't as though the Europeans paid for every single slave they took. They just took slaves. What about the country that we originally came from? Why isn't that country concerned about us? Why is it not looking for us? Why does it not want us back? These are all things that we have been discussing in our culture and in our community since forever. And Killmonger and his entire perspective is based on the fact that if you're black and you've moved up in the world and you're literally a superpower, there is no reason for any black person worldwide to ever know a day of oppression. And this is what made the movie even more powerful because it was bringing all of these conversations and themes into a Marvel superhero movie and putting them into question. It gave Killmonger, who was the primary villain, a lot of depth and a lot of multidimensionality. So he wasn't just some mustache twirling psycho who just wanted to have power. He had an agenda and a purpose that actually resonated with a great deal of the rest of the world. And it's been so fun watching my friends. I mean, I haven't gotten in the middle of these debates because I wanted to put my perspective out there first. But watching my friends side with Killmonger, like a lot of black Americans were like, yeah, what happened? Like Wakanda needs to get it together and help the community out. And each one teach one and all rise, all tides raise all boats type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just interesting looking at the response because usually people don't side with the villain, but Killmonger represented very much a black American dialogue that had been happening in the community for a long time, while challenging, the roots of where we came from. The conflict between T'Challa and Killmonger also represented just a general separation and kind of weird prejudice that exists between Africans and African Americans. Speaking from my personal experience, I can't really speak for anyone who is African, but as African American, I've been told to my face by people who are of like African background that they do not like black Americans because they feel as though we embody the worst of the worst stereotypes that are out there about black people. Now, mind you, these people saying these things to me never haven't clearly met the majority of black people. I think media plays a large role in how the world tends to see us at large. Most of us are just regular people who have jobs and work and feed our kids or whatever, just like everybody else. But you wouldn't know that watching the media, and most of us only spend time in our own communities, so you don't really know that. You don't really know the truth. basically. And I've just been told to my face about how much they hate people like me, which is always weird to hear because, like, I tend to be, and this is not me being narcissistic, but this is just me being factual. I tend to be in like the 95th to 99th percentile of people in general in terms of like the languages that I speak, the education that I have and that I've had, and the things that I'm doing, the business that I own, the things that I've created just creatively and as an artist. And I mean, I very rarely, and again, I'm not trying to be elitist, but this is just a fact. I very rarely meet people who are like me in terms of just always working to be better, a better version of myself, and to be the best version of myself. But for whatever reason, I always get cast into or get lumped into this stereotype that people want to and have to believe about me. Because I'm Black American. So what else could I be? There's no way I could like know 7 languages and have been educated in the most elite school systems in the country and in the world. Like people just don't believe that when they see me or hear about me. But like I've definitely experienced that same kind of divide that Killmonger himself was experiencing as a Black American. And I'm not putting all the blame on Africans. There are certainly African Americans who have, I'm sure, I'm positive, have said very derogatory, stereotypical things towards other people who are African. I will never deny that. There is definitely a mutual animosity there. And so that movie really addressed that animosity in a very constructive, dialectical way, which I really appreciated. And some people were like, "Oh, well, I don't like how they talked about that." But the fact is, y'all, is that this is a real conflict, and the fact this movie did address this conflict and resolve this conflict. That's another thing I want to talk about. In such a constructive way was very, very impressive to me and very necessary. So at some point too, what I like is that T'Challa and Killmonger both make some very interesting discoveries through their character arcs, and particularly through them going to visit their ancestors. Because at one point when you become the Black Panther, basically you drink the juice. I forget what it's called. It's like some flower pollen. You drink that, and then you get buried in the sand in the caves, and you're in a trance that allows you to visit with your ancestors, which I thought was such a beautiful. It was just gorgeous because it not only was it just well done aesthetically, but it was also just well done thematically. Ancestry is very important, not only to Africans, but to African Americans as well, because we are in a constant search for our true ancestry. So we got to go and see the Wakandan ancestry of T'Challa, who is descended from all these kings and queens. And then we also got to see Killmonger and, his path to talk to his ancestor, his father. But unlike with T'Challa, Killmonger only gets to meet his father. He doesn't get to meet the father's 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 father. One, because he's separated from the Wakandan family tree by his father's betrayal, but also it's representative, again, of that lost home and ancestry that just that feeling of loss and the feeling of separation from our roots that African Americans feel every day. Because I guess we're in a unique position where we're of African descent, but because we grew up here, we're American or Americanized, but we're not even really welcome in our own country. And so because we're not completely first class citizens here, we desire to go back home, but none of us really know which home that is in Africa. And on top of it, it's a very different culture. So I think we have a lot of similarities, especially when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to food, when it comes to celebration, dance, when it comes to at least our intrinsic inclination towards family structure. And we don't get it perfect as Black Americans, but we certainly try. Family is important to us. But we still aren't like Africanized. So in a lot of ways, going back to Africa, we would be strangers in a quote strange land, but at the same time coming home, you know? And it's very, very difficult to be an immigrant to a place that is supposed to be your home, but it's kind of not. So I think Black Americans are constantly on this razor's edge of being an immigrant into a place that will potentially be more accepting of you, because in Africa, blackness is not even a concept really. We're all black, so nobody really distinguishes between that and also being home in America, but being a constant stranger in your own house. So all of these conflicts, all of these just these issues that are important to us as Black people, Black Panther went in. I mean, it really went in, and I cried at the end. Honestly, I'm not even gonna ruin the last line of like the conflict between Killmonger and T'Challa, but it really resonated. I mean, it's a line that's gonna go down in history. And at the end of the day, these two Black men who came from completely different walks of life, they essentially came to a mutual understanding of who the other person is and had a mutual respect for each other, which is really incredible. So another thing that I did want to talk about, there are some interesting ways in which, aside from just being an incredible, and of course the action scenes, the CGI, all that was kick ass. So if you're just going in for a superficial reason, it's all there. All the superhero tropes, everything that you ever would want in a Marvel superhero movie is there. The cool costumes, the speed, the tech, the explosions, the action scenes, the shooting, the fighting, the love scenes, all that is there. But then there's this deeper layer that really just I could mine that forever, but I'll save that for when I'm not talking to a computer screen. But there were a few tried and true tropes as well that Black Panther completely flipped on its head, or on their heads, and I want to talk about them really quick. The white people in this, there were like two white folks in this movie, and both of them were pretty much throwaway characters. You had Andy Serkis's Ulysses Claw, who was actually a really great villain. I really enjoyed watching Ulysses Claw on screen, but he ended up getting killed by Eric Killmonger, which is an inverse of itself, because you very rarely see, again, Black men in leading roles, including villainous roles. You'll see like Black men as supporting villains, but I've never seen a Black man as like the let's put it this way, as the token supporting villain who's supposed to be the right hand. You never see that guy take over the criminal empire, which is exactly what Killmonger did. And actually, it was revealed that this entire scheme that Ulysses Claw was following through with was Killmonger's plan to begin with. Ulysses Claw just didn't think that he was going to end up dead at the end of it, but he did. That was one trope that was flipped on its head. Black man taking the charge and being the central character. Another trope that was basically flipped on its head was literally the token white character on the good guy side. So in mostly white casts, when you have like a Captain America film, for example, or you have Spider-Man film or whatever, Iron Man, Avengers, which has like no main Avengers is a Black person, but then you have like the side Black guy who's like Captain Falcon, who's Captain America's like best friend. That guy, basically the Falcon guy, was Martin Freeman, who played a CIA agent in the Black Panther movie. And he was definitely treated, not in a bad way, but he was definitely sort of a side supporting, semi-throwaway character, really only there to keep the fact that like regular human beings, like, and human governments are remotely involved in this conflict. Remotely, again, I say. Um, and he was just there as a supporting character, pretty much. You know, the throwaway character who may or may not die in helping to protect Wakanda. Turns out that that CIA agent character, we ended up not killing him, which is a lot better than how many black token characters and all white casts are treated. Usually we're the ones who are kidnapped and who are killed, or who sacrifice ourselves for the greater good so that the white hero can live. And in this movie, this guy was respected, but he was totally treated as that token character. And that was another thing that was completely flipped on its head. I kept asking myself, like, why is Martin Freeman even in this movie? This movie is perfectly fine without Martin Freeman being in it. Like, I wasn't against him, but I just didn't understand why he was there. And then I was like, oh, he is the token. Like, this is a commentary on filmmaking. That is why he is here. And as a matter of fact, it's hilarious because Andy Serkis and Martin Freeman, who played Gollum and Bilbo Baggins respectively, were both in Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, and now they're in this movie together. So they were called the Tolkien White Boys. So you get it, Token White Boys / Tolkien White Boys, which is hilarious because they really were token characters that were pretty much throwaway. One great thing that they did do with Martin Freeman's CIA character, though, is that he was throwing a lot of semi-shade, kind of like this condescending, I'm the white guy in charge type of shade, like not really understanding the power and the glory that he was dealing with when he was talking to Black Panther and Okoye in the interrogation room. There were a lot of very interesting microaggressions that were happening there that I really, really enjoyed seeing, because these are the same kinds of microaggressions that I have experienced from, and I'm just being real, you know, for those of you who don't like hearing this is my experience, but that I've received from like white men and white people when they're not discriminating against me outwardly, but they don't necessarily believe I'm on the same level. Let's put it that way. Until they find out that not only am I on the same level, but they are like leagues behind. And that is what happened in this movie. He was like busy like patting Black Panther on the shoulder, like, hey buddy, just let the authorities handle this. The authority being me. You just sit down and be, you know, a good little black boy. He didn't say it like that, but that was sort of like the undertones. Until basically he found out that he was not really the one in charge, and this had nothing to do with him. This is a inner conflict within Wakanda, which is the most powerful nation on earth. You sit down and be quiet while we use our technology to heal you, and you can just be here and be chilling, but like follow our rules, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? There was a point at which they even go to M'Baku's, who's the leader of the mountain tribe. And they go to his palace because he has basically fished T'Challa out of the river after Killmonger killed him. They go to the M'Baku's palace and they see T'Challa, who was like hanging on by a thread. They heal him, he's better. And then the CIA guy, Martin Freeman, was trying to give some advice in this throne room full of black kings and queens, and M'Baku started barking at him, and I was just like, he said, "You do not speak in this throne room." I was like, oh snaps. I mean, that was just like straight up. That wasn't even passive aggression. That was just straight up, shut up, white boy, basically is what he was saying. And I have to say, I was getting my life. It was hilarious because M'Baku, and we'll talk about him right now that we've addressed that trope. M'Baku embodied a lot of wonderful, amazing characteristics. His character in and of itself was a complete subversion of all of the negative stereotypes surrounding African culture and specifically African masculinity. M'Baku is this 6'5", really broad, like buff, just sexy man, chocolate mountain. I mean, I was just like, oh my Lord. I was like, where were you made? Take me there, M'Baku. Okay. And he is this king of the mountain tribe that did not want to basically associate with Wakanda's technological advances or whatever. They wanted to do their own thing. So they went to the mountains. They have their villages. They're chilling. They still have some pretty good advancements. They just don't invest in vibranium and stuff like that. And there's always been a rivalry between M'Baku and T'Challa/T'Chaka, like that whole Wakanda versus the Hill Tribe group. And M'Baku, like their sort of spirit animal, their representative totem is the gorilla. And as you guys will know, the gorilla and the monkey and the chimp have long been used as pejoratives against the Black community because of our big noses, our lips, our dark skin. They claim that, the claim is that we're more animal-like. We're related to chimpanzees, that we actually have tails. I've heard that. These are all the things that people have literally told me directly too, which is really sad. So this is not only in the air and in this racist culture in this country, but these are also things that I've been told directly about what people have expected of me, and of my people and of Black men. And in this movie, Black Panther, Ryan Coogler, the director, took that trope and took that insult and that racist representation and completely turned it on its head, and made it into a symbol of power, of dignity, of peace, of noble ferocity. And he, like M'Baku, who is the leader of this tribe, embodied all of those noble and strong, powerful qualities of the gorilla. Okay. Even when he challenged T'Challa for the throne, because that was the first time we saw a real challenge to his power in the beginning. Even when he challenged T'Challa for his throne, they put a panther mask on T'Challa, which was gorgeous. And they put this fierce, gorgeous, like just amazing gorilla mask onto M'Baku, just to symbolize a ceremonial combat attire. And you realize that, like, this is a majestic fight between the panther and the gorilla. And there is no shame in it. There's no condescension in it. It's just about two gorgeous, powerful totems and animals coming together. That's the mask part. But as for the men, Black Panther embodied all of those qualities of the panther, and those were noble and wonderful and uplifting. And M'Baku embodied all the characteristics of the gorilla. And it wasn't done in a way that was insulting. It wasn't done in a way that was racist or condescending. It was done in a way wherein I wanted to be a part of the damn gorilla tribe. You know what I'm saying? It was just amazing. Even when we finally see, and that this is due to not only the amazing directing and just the way the film treated M'Baku, who was called in the comics the man-ape, but also in the mise-en-scène around M'Baku. When we get introduced to M'Baku's kingdom, the first thing we see is this large jutting cliff, okay, with a huge carved statue of a gorilla, just big, strong, with these strong arms, holding up the cliff. And on top of the cliff is M'Baku's throne. And it was just such a powerful, very impactful image, because it's showing how this animal, this symbol of strength, is literally the foundation of this culture. And it's literally an embodiment of strength, power, and pride. And there was no shame in it. It was amazing. The throne room looked incredible. It looked empowering. It looked very intimidating. And I just felt as though that was a huge trope that was turned on its head. Like a trope that has been very shameful and very painful for hundreds of years. This movie took and flipped completely on its head. And M'Baku, he was strong, he was masculine, he was fierce, but he also had dignity, nobility. He also was just. And he essentially, in my opinion, y'all, was literally like the colonizers and white supremacists' worst nightmare. Like, to have a black man this empowered in this movie, if every single black man in this society were looked at that way, people would be shook as hell. So these are the kinds of men that who, when they were brought over onto slave ships, to America, that the slave masters would break first, by beating them, taking away their wives, their children, by actually raping them. Yes, like men like M'Baku, and even men of smaller stature than M'Baku, were broken. It was called literally breaking the buck. Okay, breaking the buck. That's what they called it, because they knew if they had that symbol of power by allowing that man to stand in his masculinity and in his strength, then he could then probably galvanize and moralize the rest of the slaves to revolt. And they did not want to do that. So they broke the other slaves by breaking men who looked and acted and stood just as proudly as M'Baku. So that was another thing that I really loved. The final thing that I'll talk about being turned on its head is the black masculinity. Because not only was that embodied in M'Baku, but it was also embodied in all the male characters. And it was a masculinity that was very empowering and uplifting, not toxic, not one that was couched in, oh, you're a woman, so you bow down to me, or, I am the man, so I'm going to enact violence upon you just to dominate and just to show you my power. It was a very healthy, balanced, just very constructive and positive masculinity. And I believe that it definitely serves as a role model in media to the rest of the community, because we have so many representations of toxic masculinity for black men. Basically men who believe, or at least put out the belief, that being a man means abusing women, using women, and killing other black men. Pretty much every rapper that's out right now making a good living pretty much invests in that image of toxic masculinity. And Black Panther turns all that on its head and just shows the world who we actually are on the inside as black people, but then also shows the world our potential. There's just so much in this movie, guys. You just have to see it. Again, even if you can't identify with all of these different things culturally, you can definitely appreciate that this movie, of all the Marvel superhero movies, is the most emotionally realized, is the most impactful, is just, there's more to it than just it being a superhero movie. It is it's the movie with the most gravity of all the Marvel properties. I think the only other property that came remotely close, two that came semi-close to being emotionally grounded, and I mean close by like a long shot. Not, I mean, because Black Panther is like all the way up here. These other movies I'm talking about are like down here. I would say Captain America did a really great job of bringing us emotionally into Steve Rogers' story, and into his love for country and his love for people and his desire to do good when Nazi Germany was basically killing people. I found that story to be pretty emotionally grounded. I really enjoyed that part of it. And then I think the Avengers does a really great job, not emotionally grounding us in something deeply significant, but really helping us to understand how a ragtag team of people who are focused on their own interests have to work hard to get over themselves in order to come together and save the world. For me, the emotional punch in the Avengers was looking at how they came together. Okay, how they came together around a single issue and basically became a team. That for me was very significant. It made my heart warm up. But then Black Panther took it to like 1,000%, and then I just lost my mind. So I'm going to end this by talking quickly about Infinity War and then the importance of creative entrepreneurship, because I am going over a lot longer than I meant to. Um, so, all right, Killmonger is dead, okay, which I thought was a really bad move. T'Challa offered him the chance to get healed, and he would have been healed, but Killmonger decided not to and just wanted to die on his own. And again, his last line as to why he's making that choice is incredible. Go see the movie. But we all know what is coming, okay? And that thing that is coming is called Thanos, and he is coming for the Infinity Stones. And one, it's a shame that Killmonger is dead, because Killmonger would have been a really helpful force in the Infinity War, which is coming literally in May, and I'm here for it. I am excited for it. And two, one thing that we didn't really see or figure out in the movie is where the Soul Stone is. So we know that the Mind Stone is in Vision's forehead. Okay. The Guardians of the Galaxy put another stone somewhere else, and I believe there was a third stone that was hidden somewhere in Thor Ragnarok, which I haven't seen yet, and I'm excited to see it. But I will. But I think we know the locations of those three stones. I still have no idea where the other stones are. I have no idea specifically where the Soul Stone is. A lot of nerds were trying to predict where the Soul Stone was, and they thought the Soul Stone was the thing that allowed the Black Panthers to commune with the ancestors, but that's not the case. They commune with the ancestors through the flower that gives the Black Panther his power. Okay, so there was no Soul Stone there as far as we know. But we do know from the trailer of Infinity War that there is a mass war in Wakanda. So there's something in Wakanda, or something gets taken to Wakanda or whatever. We just don't know what it is. I mean, it could just be Thanos is like, Wakanda's going to be a problem, so let's go attack Wakanda so that we can weaken Earth, in the battle. But I suspect that they might be harboring a stone. So we don't find out at all, not in the mid-credit cutscene and not in the end-credit cutscene, where the Soul Stone is. We don't know where it is. And so I am really, but we do see, just FYI, we do see Bucky, who, as you guys know, is the Winter Soldier, who was rehabilitated and was hidden in Wakanda for repairs, and also just hidden from the government at large, who did not realize that the Winter Soldier he's changed. He's just trying to live his life and do his thing. He was framed in Captain America Civil War, and now he's being protected by Wakanda. We do know that Bucky's in Wakanda getting healed up, or whatever, and he might also be changed into another character that appears in the Black Panther canon, the White Wolf, who apparently was like a little white baby that was found by King T'Chaka and raised as his own in the comic, and who became the White Wolf, who helped out Black Panther, basically like the token white guy next to Black Panther. And it's possible that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is combining the White Wolf with Bucky's character as the Winter Soldier, but we don't know anything else. So again, this movie is a self-contained movie. It's an origin story, so we see the origin of both King T'Challa and the nation of Wakanda. But I have no idea how Wakanda plays a role in Infinity War. The movie didn't really reveal that much, but I'm looking forward to it. And in the end, just FYI, in the end of Black Panther, how they resolve the whole Black elites helping out the rest of the world is that they do eventually reveal themselves to the world, which I thought was kind of a bad idea, but whatever. But the most important thing is that T'Challa goes and buys the building that Killmonger grew up in, that his father was killed in. He buys that entire building and the projects, and he's turning it into a technological facility. And he is also building more places in across the United States and in the world to serve as like community support centers, research centers, and his girl, I guess she's now his girlfriend, Nakia will also be throughout the world working at like, these technological centers for social outreach. And Shuri is going to be the director of like all these technical places, which is great. Because she is an amazing, amazing engineer and scientist who's always inventing new amazing stuff, which is great. So that's basically what happened. And so I think the only thing that we really get for Infinity War is that because now Wakanda is exposed to the world and there's going to be different centers built by Wakanda in the United States, we are probably going to see an attack on any one of these centers, with Shuri in it and or Nakia in them, because at some point, as we see in the trailer, Thanos does come to the States in New York City, and he also might be going to Oakland, California, where all these centers are going to be. So that's basically that. I just want to turn the discussion really quickly, because I'm now over an hour and I'm running out of steam a little bit. But I think it's super important, FYI, because of the massive success of Black Panther, and it hasn't even been out for 2 weeks. And I believe that this is going to lead, if not to more Black superhero movies and Black sci-fi on the big screen, it is certainly galvanizing a ton of people of color who are writers, filmmakers, set designers, all these different people who maybe have just been afraid or nervous to engage in their art and in their craft fully because they felt that there was no place for what they wanted to do. And I see it. I just see the entire Afrofuturistic market just exploding after this, whether that's going to be both in the mainstream or in the indie space. I don't really know, or it could be both. But this is just my message to you, especially as a person of color. If you have been reluctant to write your sci-fi, your fantasy, your stuff, because you wanted to do diversity characters and diversity issues and diversity themes, and you were afraid there was no market for it, that is garbage. I've always known that that's garbage, and that's why I'm a novelist and I'm trying to do all this cool sci-fi fantasy stuff. But if you didn't know before that was garbage, then you know now, because Black Panther is breaking records. And even for people who haven't typically thought about Black sci-fi, they're thinking about it now. And there's going to be, after the Black Panther craze dies down, there are going to be literally millions of people who are hungry for this kind of material, especially if you are a director. This is why I want to be a film director myself and do action, sci-fi, and fantasy with all Black cast, with diverse cast, with female cast. And because I know that the hunger for these things are out there. We just need the support and we need the money, basically, is what we need. And this is why I've been such a huge proponent of creative entrepreneurship, because when you have an idea that you want to go forward with in the world, there's always a market for it, and it might be bigger than you even expected. I mean, we were expecting Black Panther to do well, but I don't think anybody would think that this was going to be literally the biggest Marvel movie. And that raises a lot of questions as to why people have thought this entire time that, doing diversity is not profitable, and what people have been doing wrong in the past to make these kinds of diversity initiatives flop, because clearly the market is there. And so what I expect is to see, or at least I would hope, is to see more studios, more producers, more money invested in getting creators of color to sell these companies their ideas. And to, these companies are going to be on the lookout for creative properties. And if you're a person of color and you're writing some kick-ass comics, some amazing novel series, an epic fantasy series, the next Game of Thrones, but the Black version, you need to be doing that right now. And you need to finish it as soon as you can, within reason, as long as it's quality. You need to start practicing your pitch, and you need to either start pitching your ideas to studios, or to production houses or to publishing houses, or you need to be making your stuff yourself. You guys know me. I'm all about, me being Colby R. Rice, CEO and founder of Rebel Ragdoll, which is an independent multimedia company. Also like the owner of The Bohemian Badass, which deals specifically with creating indie properties. You guys know I am very much about the independent creator and the independent process of creating intellectual property. So I believe that if you can write and you can read and you can take classes, you can create your own movie that is a superhero movie. You can create, your own novel series that can then be spun into a TV series or a movie. You can do your own independently shot short form 13 episode, black sci-fi or, black fantasy series. You can do it. You really can. The market is there. So you guys need to get up off your asses and stop being afraid and make your stuff, because Black Panther, if you didn't know before, you know now, and Black Panther's success is going to pave the way. Even if that means that studios are not buying properties left and right from people of color, what it does mean is that the entire Black community and anybody who loves diverse sci-fi has been activated. When you get a dose of Black Panther and you fall in love with it and you realize that these representations in this sci-fi and fantasy world that they are possible, after you consume Black Panther, you want more. So make sure that you are available to give more and to fill that demand. That's all I have to say. At this point. And having said that, let me get off this podcast so I can finish working on my novel series and all the projects that I have going on, so that I can basically take my own advice and be the change that I want to see in the world. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this analysis of Black Panther. I hope that you guys go see it again and again and again. I will definitely be doing that this spring break. I am super excited. And I will see you guys in the next episode, which is basically me celebrating the fact that this is the last week before spring break. I'm so excited. All I'm trying to do, guys, is just get through the week so I can just get back and, keep working on my business, Rebel Ragdoll, and keep working on my novel series. All right, so I'm out of here. I will talk to you guys actually in a couple of days, because I'm going to post another weekly update that actually deals with the week that I just had. But until then, keep it indie. Keep it indie. Keep creating like I keep telling you to do. Stay badass, and I will talk to you guys in a few days. Okay. Bye.